Hello, I'm Russell Moore. Some people have been writing in and asking how pastors should speak about the marriage decision that the Supreme Court handed down today when they get into their pulpits on Sunday. And I think that's a really good question. I think that a pastor should, first of all, communicate to his people that this is no time for panic and no time for fear. There are some Christians in America who are going to respond to a decision like this and assume that this means that everything that we've ever known is gone and lost. And that's simply not true. Instead, we are to be the people who have the confidence that Jesus Christ is alive, that Jesus is sovereign over history, and that confidence needs to be present not only in what we teach, but also in how we teach it. And so I think a pastor who is not gloomy or panicked or angry is a sign of the gospel here. The second thing is, I think we need to communicate that marriage and sexuality, contrary to what the rest of the world thinks, these aren't things that we can just accommodate to the rest of the culture. There are some Christians who kind of get into fight or flight mode when these sorts of things happen and assume, well, maybe we can just change what we believe. We can't do that because we're a people who are governed by Jesus through His Word, and the Word is very clear on what sexuality is for, on what marriage is for, on what families are. We have to continue to articulate that, and in fact articulate it more, because we can't assume that people know that. So a pastor could stand up and say, here's why Christians believe that marriage is the union of a man and a woman. Talk about Ephesians 5 and the picture of the union of Christ and His church. Talk about Revelation 21 and 22, about that final image in the Bible of the union of Christ and the New Jerusalem, the church, together. And then I think we need to communicate how to love people. Sometimes when something happens this way, especially when it happens in a way that disappoints us, we tend to get into the sort of American mode of anger and outrage and demonizing of our enemies. A pastor can signal very clearly that he has enough confidence in the gospel not to retreat into that. To recognize that most of our gay and lesbian neighbors don't reflect the attitude of the activists that people might see on television. Most of them just genuinely believe that now they're going to have the opportunity to have the sort of marriage that their parents and grandparents had. You and I know that based upon what God has done in creation, that's not going to happen. That you can't just create marriage in a way that hasn't been designed by God. And so empathize with people who are exuberantly celebrating this decision, and make sure that your people see a model from you, that you don't hate people who disagree with you. Because think about this for a minute. The people who right now are really hostile to what we believe, they're not any more hostile than Saul of Tarsus was. Saul of Tarsus wanted to murder us in Damascus. God turned him around, and not only did He include him in the church, He made him a leader of the church and sent the gospel through him in a way that came down to us. And so communicate to your people that our gay and lesbian and bisexual and transgender neighbors and the people who think that we're bigots or haters because we hold to biblical notions of marriage, those aren't our enemies. We don't wrestle with them. We wrestle with principalities and powers in the heavenly places. So conviction and kindness need to come forward in all of our pulpits, and both of those two things held together. And I think that is a matter even more in terms of what we're saying, of how we're saying it. And so if you have a pastor who is confident enough in the gospel and the Spirit that we're not fearful of what's happening in the world around us, and also is confident enough in the mission that we don't refashion it based upon what's fashionable at the moment in the culture, I think that sends a word of witness that our people can pick up on and emulate as we bear witness to Christ.